technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
Wednesday morning, hello and welcome from all of us here at Newsroom. My name, of course, Evan Jansen. This show is always live and broadcast from our studios right here in Auckland Park. Between 9 and 12 every weekday morning, we're also live on YouTube through our streaming facility. You can watch us anywhere in the world on demand throughout the day if you like. Of course, today, well, we're dealing with a waste management situation here in Gauteng. We ask today, the plague. Now, threats of the plague spreading in and around Johannesburg's townships because of a rat infestation. Is the threat of a plague outbreak real in Johannesburg? That's a question we ask you. If it is, even, we'd like to know what you think. We'll have the National Centre of Communicable Diseases in the studio in a short while to give us their views on this and whether we should be concerned. Are you? At SABC Newsroom is where you can communicate with us. Busy news day as always. Let's go to Elvis for our first update.
Thank you, Evan, and let's take it right from the top. Opposition parties in Parliament are intending to turn to the Constitutional Court to enforce Section 89 of the Constitution. Negotiations between the city of Johannesburg and striking picket-up workers remain deadlocked. And Tanzania's ambassador to the United Nations expressed his regret at the latest sexual abuse allegations implicating members of his country's contingent serving in the DRC. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to the news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you, Kendall.
Elvis, a very good morning to you and a good morning to everybody at home as well. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. Barely 2 months in as head of world football's governing body and new FIFA president, Gianni Infantino is already having to dodge tax evasion claims.
Brucky wins it for SuperSport United. What an extraordinary evening.
Tuks throw away a golden opportunity to finally beat SuperSport United, losing 4-2 on penalties in their Nedbank Cup last 16th fixture. And Luis Suarez inspires a gritty fight back from a goal down at the new camp to beat 10-man Atletico 2-1 in their first leg UEFA Champions League quarter-final.
Into Suarez! Luis Suarez at the double. Barcelona bounce back from being behind.
Fantastic night of great footballing action. More of that later on at about 10:20 or so. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you, Kendall. Top story this morning. Opposition parties in Parliament are intending to turn to the Constitutional Court to enforce Section 89 of the Constitution. They presented a united front after a motion to remove the President, Jacob Zuma, from office failed in the National Assembly. 233 MPs voted against it and 143 voted in favour.
The order of the day, a motion to remove the president from his office.
We know that the ANC will fall in line behind President Zuma, but it is not our job to worry about the internal politics of the ANC. Our job is to uphold the Constitution, to expose the truth, and to offer a clear way forward for the country.
First up for the ruling party was Deputy Justice Minister John Jeffrey.
The court did not find a serious violation, as Section 89(1)(a) of the Constitution requires. Nor did the court declare that the President had perpetrated a serious violation of the Constitution or the law, committed serious misconduct, or has shown an inability to perform the functions of office. And it is only on these grounds that Parliament may remove the President from office.
Opposition parties continue to plead with ANC MPs to vote with their conscience.
We are calling upon you to have another Ben Turok amongst you. Another Ben Turok who's going to vote against a mob. It is better to stand alone and stand for the truth.
We as a National Assembly now have a responsibility to act. Otherwise, history will judge us harshly.
The United Democratic Movement recommends as follows. South Africans from all sectors of society should urgently meet and reclaim their freedom by developing and adopting a program of action which will, amongst others, include an immediate resignation of President Zuma, failing which the citizens must cause him to be criminally charged.
The ANC members have the opportunity to search their conscience and offer leadership.
Not all opposition members agreed, and the ANC once more defended the president.
If the president then fails to pay within the prescribed 45 days, only then can we say he has deliberately, knowingly, and with malice violated the Constitution. This will then meet his removal requirements.
But the 143 who voted for the president's removal are not done, and they may approach the Constitutional Court again.
Some direction must be given. There's a clear indication in Section 89 that we are duty-bound if an occupant of the office of president violates the Constitution or a serious violation of the law, that we must take action against such an individual. We were determined that such an action must be carried out, but we are defeated by a majority.
It seems neither Parliament nor the courts have seen the end of this saga just yet. April Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
Negotiations between the city of Johannesburg and striking picket-up workers remain deadlocked. The unprotected labour action is in its 5th week, often marred by incidents of violence and intimidation. Our SABC News reporter Makhetla Moshlabe is keeping tabs on the strike, how residents, small business and even striking workers are affected.
For better or worse, the strike is hitting home. Union offices now a camping site. And after their March wages, little to take home. Monies were deducted due to the industrial action.
I have to take my children to school. We need to eat. We also need to take transport to and from our areas. As you see us here, we don't even sleep at our homes.
2,000.
I was paid 2,000 rand. 500 rand was deducted, and then 800, and then another 600. I now have 3 rand 40 cents. I don't even know what I'm going to use it for.
The reality of unprotected labor action.
I left 2 children on their own at home. The youngest is 8 years old. I'm a single mother. I asked for a slice of bread so I can take my medication.
And no work, no paid principle, they applied it. We just got paid after they deducted those past days that were not at work. And by this end of April, we know that all of us will get 0-0.
Pick-it-up workers want wage hike from 6 to 10,000 rand a month, and MD Amanda Naya fired.
We are still saying, as the employees of Pick It Up, we'll go back to work, provided the employer give us money.
As cleaners dig in their heels, increasing health risks, especially in informal settlements like Alex. In daytime, flies. When the sun sets, scarring rats.
Our children come and play here. Once they're done playing, they're holding the rubbish, the germs. Then they go eat indoors.
The smell is so overwhelming that I could feel it when I'm asleep. It's too much to bear. We struggle to sleep.
Even a warning by the National Institute of Communicable Diseases.
Flies can transmit germs mechanically on their legs, so that's one issue. People handling the rubbish or playing in it, as children might do, might be exposed to various pathogens. A number of risks from rodents. They can attack people, they can bite them, they can transmit infections either directly by their bites or from their excretions and secretions.
Yes, we understand the workers' issues that are very central. It's about their well-being, and we'll never downplay those issues. But also the workers must have a full understanding of the impact and the implications of the uncollected rubbish over such a prolonged period of time.
The city of Johannesburg says it's been paying private contractors 1 million rand a day. Money, some says, that should rather be used to hike wages. But Pick It Up says it does not have a choice.
As we look at addressing the issues that they are having, at the same time we've got a responsibility as a city to clean the city. We cannot fold our arms. Unfortunately, those services, they come at a cost.
Part of contingency measures, volunteers.
With overflowing bins and rubbish piling up on pavements and in open spaces, the stench is overwhelming. Volunteers have the unenviable task to help clean up, but not all of them have protective gear.
The problem that we have is that we are volunteers, but we need them to help us with dust masks because the smell is too much to bear.
The strike is also playing havoc with small businesses. In the pre-strike days, Pilile Mhlatlo pocketed 1,000 rand per day. She now only takes 250 rand home.
There are a lot of flies in there, and when my customers arrive and realize that, they leave without buying any food.
A flurry of meetings were held on Tuesday. Kosatu Gauteng had joined the talks. SABC News, Johannesburg.
Now, the story certainly causing a stink. Now, we're asking you that question. Do you think that the threat of a plague outbreak is real here in Johannesburg, seeing what you've just seen? But for more on the story, and this is our theme for today, it's over to Eben.
Yeah, thank you very much, Travis. Very good morning to you if you've just joined us now. Makiketla Motlabe, he's been following the stories with us in studio this morning. Very good morning to you, Makiketla. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Eben.
Nice to have you off the street, out of the rubbish there. It seems as if it's piling up all over in Johannesburg. Before we get into the conversation, tell us about your experiences around this strike. It's been ongoing for just a little bit more than a month now.
Well, listen, it's been a very dirty story to tell so far, over a month now. Working through the informal settlements like Alex as well as Deep Sloot, you get the residents, frustrations, complaining about their children playing on rubbish and coming back into the house and eating. And obviously, this gives a health hazard to the residents. So, to me, it doesn't seem like the dirty curtain will come down anytime soon, unless something has been done by the city of Johannesburg as well as the unions that are involved in these negotiations.
Now, I'm sure you've been talking to community members and so forth, and all stakeholders, really, because that's what we do. But are they aware of this possible outbreak of the plague? Are they aware of the health risks that surround this and what this continued, and it is an illegal strike, mind you, what it's causing and what the threats are?
Well, of course, they're aware of that, and in these, obviously, there is a chain of events that actually taking place. First of all, we have the workers who now don't have anything in terms of money to go home, to take transport to go home. on the other side, you get them sleeping at the SAMU offices because of that, and there's deductions as well. They've managed to show us their pay slips, whereby you could see a lot of deductions taking place after the small amount of pay that they got. Deductions here, you're talking about the likes of loan sharks as well are involved, UIF is involved, medical aid is involved. So others, of course, saying that we have our kids who are actually at school, we don't even know what we're going to use to pay them for their fees this time around. So they are definitely aware of the repercussions involved in this situation. On the other hand, they are also aware that by the end of this month, April, they're not going to be getting anything from the city of Johannesburg. They're definitely aware of that. So on the other side, we have Pick It Up, who are losing about 1 million rand per day paying the outsourced companies. And of course, this is the money, according to some, saying that it's supposed to be going to their workers. But Pick It Up saying that we don't have any choice. We have to pay the contractors so that they do the job. But to me, it doesn't seem that enough has been done to address the issue. You walk around the informal settlements, pile up of this rubbish in the streets. It's terrible.
You've been talking to the workers. What are they saying, or what does it look like? How long can they continue this kind of action? And it is an illegal action, so what is the way forward?
Well, remember, at the heart of these particular stoppages is the MD, Amanda Ney, whom they want her to be shown the door, as well as the 10,000 rand per month that they are demanding. So this is what they've been actually demanding, and it seems that if nothing is being done to give them what they want, they will continue to, leave the trash out there. So. Yeah.
What are they saying? What are the demands? Where are they now with regards to salary, and what do they want? I hear the number 10,000 is being mooted, but surely the people who collect the rubbish can't be earning more than school teachers. These are concerns that I think we all have to think about.
Well, definitely. I mean, the main issue here is that 10,000. Unless they get that money, they're not going to go back to work. And, of course, there are some hearings going on at this point in time. They're still waiting for the outcome of that particular hearing. And with the result of it being that there is a possible dismissal of them by the city of Johannesburg, they are aware of that. So it just remains to be seen whether or not they will be going back to work, considering the outcome of whatever is going to be coming out of the hearing.
Makeketla, thank you for joining us, and thank you for doing such a sterling job. That was a wonderful package you did there to kind of put us in the picture to what is happening not only in the city centre, but important for us to see out in the townships, often the neglected parts of the city, and the picture is certainly not looking good. Thank you very much for joining us today. That's our very own man on the ground, Makeketla Motlabe. He will be out on the streets again. If you see him giving an interview and tell him what you think about this. Our question of the day, of course, deals directly with this. There's the threat of the plague. Now, I simply can't get my head around it. I think it's such a so far from one's reality. But that's our question of the day. Is the threat of a plague outbreak here in Johannesburg, is it real? What do you think of it? At SABC Newsroom, that's where you can give us your contribution. Now, of course, today we've got the National Institute of Communicable Diseases who's standing by with Elvis to give us their views on this. I'm very interested to hear what are they going to tell us. Elvis?
Now, a man that can tell us all about that is sitting right here next to me, as piles of garbage are accumulating throughout the Johannesburg CBD and the surrounding areas. Now, as the mountains of rubbish get higher and higher, the smell of rotting trash becomes intense. Rodents and other pests are finding food and subsistence, and they're breeding on this rubbish there. Now, what dangers does all this pose for us as the human population? Now, to find out more about this, we're joined in studio by Professor John Freen, Associate Professor and Deputy Director at the National Institute for Communicable Diseases. Professor, a very good morning to you and welcome.
Thank you.
First and foremostly, the health hazard in Johannesburg. Do Johannesburg residents or Joburg residents face this as a result of the trash that has been piling up over the last couple of weeks?
I think we have to say yes. And there are a variety of threats. There's the issue posed by the fly problem. There's direct contact with this rotting rubbish. And, of course, the one that's you've mentioned is the rodent problem. And rodents pose a number of health threats. And I think, to put it in perspective, I think at this moment we cannot say that there's a plague outbreak. But there are a number of other infections which are transmitted by rodents. Which
Talk us through those infections that people can be affected.
So we can look at it from several points of view. Rodents will attack people, they'll bite people, and those bites can transmit infections. Then we have infections transmitted by their urine and feces. The classical one is leptospirosis, but there are several other infections, and then we have the diseases transmitted by their fleas and ticks and lice, and that's the classic one, of course, is plague, which is flea-borne, and although the concept of plague sounds unreal to us, we must remember that South Africa is actually a plague country. For 50 years or so, we had regular outbreaks of plague, mainly in rural areas. But in 1904, Johannesburg had a plague outbreak. So the country is receptive for plague, and that is why we have this monitoring program in place.
There were some reports of some people complaining about the fleas and the ticks that has been biting them. Is that all part and parcel of what the rubbish is doing to the communities?
Yes, I think it provides a source of food and refuge for rodents, and they'll breed. And the more rodents you have, the more likely you are to have contact with humans.
Now, obviously, residents are getting desperate. They can't move the rubbish, so they opt to some of them burning the rubbish. Is that a good idea?
In general, not. It poses dangers from fire. There's fire hazards, of course. People may get burnt, or shacks may catch on fire. But the smoke itself can be an irritant. Can cause eye and chest problems, especially in people who have existing respiratory issues.
How hazardous is the situation for livestock and even plants, for that matter, especially in the rural areas? Or not in rural areas, in the townships?
We're talking about urban areas or peri-urban areas. Well, rubbish contains toxic chemicals which can leach out, get into the environment, and poison the ground and water. So, some of those toxins include heavy metals from the objects we throw away. So, on a number of levels, accumulated rubbish can cause many health problems. Yes.
What sort of health intervention are you seeking, Professor, for the situation to basically work itself out?
Well, obviously, it's the primary intervention is clearing away the rubbish as quickly as possible. But we have to keep in mind that may not immediately solve the rodent problem, because if you take away their source of food and shelter, they may in fact come into closer contact with humans as they invade their houses to look for these things. So we need to, residents need to be aware of that and to try and take whatever precautions they can.
So we're asking the question in terms of the plague in Johannesburg. So what is your advice to people today, and what is the are we being alarmist perhaps?
As I said, we need to look at this in perspective. We've got so far one rodent which showed evidence of contact with plague. It was not actually sick or infected with plague at the time. And this is one of many rodents which are caught by the City Health Department. So it's a warning that we need to intensify our surveillance program and take action in that area where it was found, which the environmental health officers have been doing in terms of flea control and rodent control. But we need to intensify our surveillance. So we don't have a plague outbreak. There's no evidence of an outbreak at this point, but we need to keep our eyes open for the possibility.
Your advice for households, how do they make sure that they are not being infected? Or
So try and secure your food so it's not accessible to rodents. Try and keep rodents out of your house. As far as possible, clear refuse away from your house. Try to block up burrows and defects in your house as far as you can.
Professor, thank you so much for your time and joining us here in studio.
It's a pleasure.
Now that was Professor John Freen, the Associate Professor and Deputy Director at the National Institute for Communicable Disease. You heard it all, but we're going to continue. We're asking you, of course, that question: what do you think can be done in order to make sure that we do not have a plague here? Is the threat then of a plague outbreak here in Johannesburg real? Well, shortly we'll also have Pick It Up as well as the union in the studio. I think it's Sambo. Yeah, they'll be joining us as well to talk about this. But right now it's over to Eben for comments.
Yeah, thanks, Elvis. Yesterday, of course, I wasn't here, but the show asked you a question: what else can be done to rid our communities of gangs? Of course, gang infestations seem to be on the rise all over the country. Let's have a look at what were some of your views that you put forward. Mahato Jr. said, SABC Newsroom, gangs exist because too many people are unemployed. So to some, joining is the way to get bread on the table, says Mahato. Henrietta Gainsford says, SABC Newsroom, community people are afraid because some police are taking part in supporting gangs by withholding information on the gangs from the state, says Henrietta. And then Ndozaki says, gang violence must end in South Africa because they kill our young future president, and the law must play their role. Then Idol Nyogobel says, SABC Newsroom, employment, sports grounds, libraries, youth centre, less taverns in communities, he says. Less taverns in our communities. Well, that was yesterday's question of the day. Now, let's go on with today's show and take a look at the front page of newspapers from around the globe. We'll start in Europe today, where the Times reports that world leaders, criminals and billionaire sheikhs have secretly poured hundreds of millions of pounds into London properties. Leaked offshore data reveals this. And then in New York, the Wall Street Journal says Pfizer has decided to kill its planned $150 billion takeover of Allergan after the Obama administration took aim at a deal that would have moved the biggest drug company in the U.S. to Ireland in order to lower its taxes. Then finally in Israel, the Jerusalem Post reports that the growing threat of Islamic State and other jihadists in Egypt has in part spurred the U.S. government to consider pulling its forces from a base in the Sinai Peninsula. That report was from CNN last night. Let's now take a look at what's happening in our courts today. We'll start in Pretoria, where the state is expected to strengthen its argument in defence of controversial Hawks Head burning in Ndlemeza in the High Court in Pretoria. Yesterday, the Helen Suzman Foundation and Freedom Under Law brought an urgent application asking the court to interdict Ndlemeza from performing his duties pending court reviews on the legality of his appointment. Still in Pretoria, the three men accused of stealing 17 million rand in foreign currency from the State Security Agency are expected back in the Pretoria Magistrates Court. Also, in the Northwest Province, 6 suspects arrested in a drug bust are expected to appear in the Rustenburg Magistrates Court. Of course, the 6 are facing charges of drug trafficking, illegal possession of dacha, platinum concentrate and money laundering as well. Those are some of the top stories on the diary today. Let's now take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue with our look at, well, refuse removal in and around Johannesburg and the health risks that pictures like this pose to our communities. After the break.
Technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming. Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
Hindu devotees took a holy dip at Sangam, the confluence of rivers Ganges. People and priests made their way to the banks before the break of dawn. Security arrangements were in place for police forces patrolling on the river banks to ensure smooth functioning of the event.
A mobile museum in India's West Mumbai is highlighting the skills and creativity of residents of one of Asia's largest slums.
That's what we've been doing here, is creating this platform. And we came here to help it develop and to, just build it up.
Welcome back. Rubbish continues to pile up across Johannesburg as workers at the city's waste management firm pick it up. Are still on strike. It's now 5 weeks into it. The National Institute for Communicable Diseases has expressed concerns over a possible plague outbreak. This after a rat in Tembisa tested positive for a dormant plague virus. Workers are demanding higher wages and are calling for their managing director, Amanda Nair, calling for her resignation. Meanwhile, the company announced that day shifts would be reintroduced in areas serviced by Avalon, Central Camp and Zondi depots in Soweto, as well as the Norwood depot here in Johannesburg. Now, to give us a little bit more detail, I'm joined in studio by the City of Johannesburg's member of the Mayoral Committee for Environment, Infrastructure and the Service Department, Matshidiso Mfikwe. Very good morning to you, ma'am. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
Let's start with what the Centre for Communicable Diseases have just come out. They've told us that these kinds of situations, like we see on the picture there, is becoming untenable because South Africa is a country that is susceptible to a plague outbreak, and rats are starting to test positive for the plague. What's your reaction to this?
They did speak to the executive mayor and my colleague, the MMC for Health. We are concerned about that. Hence, we have upped the cleanup and intensified the plan through, and we're working with them. We appreciate the support and the warnings that they keep on giving us. We are also working with the Department of Health in the province and our own environmental health, so that they could monitor from time to time. They're keeping us on our tabs, hence we need to ensure that we do implement the contingency plan.
I want to talk about this illegal strike. How does the city view this strike right now? We're more than 5 weeks in. It's having a real effect on communities. How do you view this strike? It is illegal, this strike. How do you view it?
It is an unprotected strike that makes it illegal. We have issued 2 court orders which were not really taken into consideration. We've issued as well the notices that if people don't come to work, we were going to ensure that we take them through a process. The disciplinary processes have said last week. We're waiting for the chairperson of the disciplinary hearings to tell us what is he saying. We want the strike to come to an end. We are concerned about the piling up of waste. Our major concern, as we started off, is the outbreak of diseases, manifestation of rats. So we are highly worried about that. So we are hopeful. Last night, the union and the city people met from 3 o'clock up until the wee hours of the morning, hoping that once they reconvene again today, they will be able to give us something that we can gladly say to the communities, the strike is coming to an end. We want to see an end to the strike. We would, I guess, from where I'm sitting, would give anything to get the strike to an end without necessarily flouting the laws and picking the city's budget out in the sky.
Now, this conversation between the city, between Pick It Up and unions have been going on through the night. I think negotiations are still ongoing. What are the prospects of us coming up with a deal in the near future? And what has been your negotiation process? What has it been like dealing with the Municipal Workers Union, SAMU, because we've invited them on the show and they pulled out at the last minute this morning. So they're very difficult, it seems, to get to sit down and discuss this properly.
The negotiations are more about how do we getting into implementing the parity issues that they have raised. We have indicated to the communities and to them that the issues that are affecting the MD are being dealt with. There is a firm appointed to investigate the dossier that they gave us. So those ones will put aside for now. But the biggest focus needs to be on how are we moving ahead in implementing parity that they have been speaking about. I guess they couldn't come because they've been in the meetings. I'm told that they stopped talking at 3 a.m. and I'm not making an excuse for them. I'm just thinking as to the reasons. Hopefully, as the day breaks and they resume, they will be able to talk to you guys. But for now, we're hoping that the negotiations continuing today and tomorrow will give us a deal by Friday where we can say people can come back to work.
Now, the mayor here, Park Star, he says that you at the city are doing your best to put contingencies in place, but they're difficult to implement. What are the difficulties that you are finding with implementation of contingency, and are workers still being attacked and being intimidated?
Yes, that is the difficulty, that we can't send out trucks and workers out in the streets without the security. Now we've been using JMPD. I'm glad to announce that the ADT, the private security ADT, the SSS have agreed that they will partner with us. So it increases our capacity into escorting the trucks as well as the workers. Because even the workers become scared, they become intimidated. You know, we're still waiting to hear what the court is saying in relation to the 2 that were arrested and charged with attempted murder for beating up workers and vandalizing some of our trucks. One of our trucks was actually vandalized in the inner city a day before yesterday. So that is our difficulty. But we will forge ahead into implementing the contingency plan. We must resolve this picture.
What's the time frame that you are hopeful that we will see all of these pictures disappeared, especially out of our townships that seem to be most at risk and the least serviced at the moment?
Our informal settlements are the ones most at risk. That is where we're shifting now the contingency plan into focusing on, still calling on the community to do cleanups. And I'm really encouraged by the amount of uptake that the community has taken into saying, give us material, we will work with you.
I thank you very much for joining us. That is the Mayoral Committee member for the Environment, Infrastructure and Service, Machadiso Mfigwe. I thank you for joining us today, and let's hope that negotiations go swimmingly over the next couple of days, because this is going to lead to disease, as we've seen. Thank you once again for coming to see us this morning. Now, I can tell you, those of you that say, no, but you're not balanced, where is the union? We've asked the union nicely. They've agreed to come on the show this morning. Unfortunately, they pulled out at the last minute. The phones are all off. I'm being told now by the Mayoral Committee member that maybe it's because negotiations have gone on until 3 a.m. this morning, so we'll cut them a little bit of slack. Hopefully, at some point during the day, they'll come out and give us their side of the story. This is our question, of course. Is the threat of a plague outbreak real in Johannesburg? What do you think? These are the pictures all around our city today. It is not good. Of course, the Pick It Up strike entered its 4th week with growing concerns over the health and environment impact caused by uncollected refuse. Lots of comments around it. People are simply fed up, as they say. Emma Liston says, so now we are paying for private refuse removal. We should all refuse to pay refuse fees on our accounts. Filthy health hazard. Emma, if we stop paying, they stop collecting, and it gets worse, my dear. We have to work together on this one. Tony Stone says, I see the newspapers are now reporting the health hazard Pick It Up strike is fast becoming. I spoke about this a week ago. Time for action, says Tony Stone. What are you doing, Tony Stone? Tell us, what are you doing? Keith Adam Mohammed saying, Pick It Up workers, illegal strike demands 10K. City of Joburg must not give in to this nonsense and set a crazy precedent. Yes, a very sober thought there from Keith. Happiness is running says, Pick it up, Iani Confuser. They're wasting money on outsourcing than to meet the demands of the employees. Am I missing something? Yes, Happiness, you are missing something. If everyone came out and demanded 10,000 Rand tomorrow, nobody would be working and our entire country would look like the picture that you see there. We cannot be held ransom to illegal strikes in South Africa. It is as simple as that. Now, let's take a look to our Facebook page. This is what's on there today. Of course, legal experts have dismissed President Jacob Zuma's interpretation of the Constitutional Court ruling. Then, Tanzania's ambassador to the UN has expressed his regret at the latest sexual abuse allegations implicating members of his country's contingent serving under the UN in the DRC. Also, Republican Ted Cruz yesterday won the Wisconsin presidential primary with ease, dealing a hammer blow to frontrunner Donald Trump's hopes of amassing enough delegates for the party's nomination and boosting chances of a rare contested convention. That's what's on Newsroom Facebook page. Of course, you can just put us in the search bar on Facebook, put in Newsroom, we'll pop up. Like our page, we'll send you all the stuff as it happens. We're going to take another break. When we come back, we'll look at, well, how better to manage waste. What can we do in our own capacity to deal with the issue of waste in and around our homes? Don't go away.
Now, we're talking about waste management. Well, some say, you know, if you look at the situation currently with all the dirt and all the rubbish piling up, that we perhaps dirty, rotten scoundrels. But the current industrial action has brought into sharp focus how we handle and manage waste in South Africa. Waste management in South Africa is governed by the National Environmental Management, the Waste Act of 2008, which came into effect on the 1st of July 2009. Remember that. The Minister of Environmental Affairs then established the National Waste Management Strategy for achieving the objectives of the Act. Now, the Waste Act supports the waste management hierarchy in its approach to waste management by promoting cleaner production, waste minimization, reuse, recycling and waste treatment, with disposal seen as a last resort in the management of waste. Now, Dr. Johan Skoenraad is EnviroServe's Group Technical Specialist, and he now joins us in studio to talk about waste management. A very good morning to you, Doctor, and welcome.
Good morning to you too.
First and foremostly, you've seen some of the clips and some of the interviews that we had this morning. We also asked a question to our listeners about the plague. But has the time not come for South Africa to perhaps classify waste as an essential service, you think?
Well, as far as I understand, according to the Labour Relations Act, it is already classified as an essential service. And there seems to be a lot of debate now on should there be an enforcement of what is already a legislated need, that you have to provide the service or not.
Because if it is essential, then people shouldn't go on strike.
Correct.
That's number one. Now, littering in this country, and especially now in Johannesburg, it's a huge problem, all over the country for that matter. Are we perhaps sitting here in Johannesburg on an environmental crisis?
I think there's a bit of a, let's call it a debate on what is meant by littering. Now, if you drive on the M1 between Johannesburg and Pretoria and you happen to be caught in one of those traffic jams, look out your window and see the cigarette stubs lying next to the concrete barrier, that, in my terminology, would be littering. I've just also come back recently from a trip down to the Western Cape, and a lot of the stopping points along the way, you stop under a tree, you have a cup of coffee, and you see paper lying around, you see food wrappers, that I think is littering. What we're seeing right now is dumping. People are taking garbage and dumping it because there is no other alternative for them right now. So I think there needs to be a clear distinction between littering, which is an offence, there's no question, it's in our law, and that if you're caught littering, there's a fine, as far as I understand, up to 5,000 rand for a littering offence, and what is being, in a sense, forced on people to dump their garbage because there is no other solution right now.
So if waste is an essential service, my tongue gets stuck this morning, probably because of the waste. But in terms of waste management in South Africa, where do we stand, or do we have a management plan or a policy for our country?
Oh, absolutely. If you look at the development of our legislation from the original Environmental Conservation Act into the National Environmental Management Act, which led to the Waste Act that you referred to, there's clear guidance happening from government on how we should be dealing with waste. Our historic way of dealing with waste is certainly a legislation which was built around protecting water resources. And the newest versions of our legislation, which the Waste Act is now empowering, is pushing waste up the waste hierarchy. We're saying, no, you need to reduce its source, you need to recycle, you need to recover, and as you said, disposal being the last option.
But
So
do we do that, though? Do we reuse, do we recycle, because it seems like a lot of people are disposing?
We have a challenge in South Africa, and it's a global challenge, essentially, where the world economy, and particularly let's call it the collapse in oil pricing, is driving a lot of initiatives away from recycling. When the oil price was high, you would find that it was cost-effective to recycle plastics. I was at a recent meeting where the PET organization, that's the plastics organization that makes the plastics that go into soft drink bottles, typically Coca-Cola, etc., we're saying that it's now cheaper to buy virgin material than to buy recycled material. So the world economy is also, in a sense, forcing people to move away from recycling initiatives which were cost-effective historically into going into using virgin materials. Linked to that as well, we have the issue of, is the true cost of disposal seen by your typical municipal user? And this was acknowledged in the National Environmental Strategy, the waste strategy, which was published by the government. They actually flagged that the true cost accounting of waste disposal is not picked up through the municipal billing system. And that people are not aware of what it actually costs them as individuals to manage their waste. So there's a catch-22 situation here where people are spoiled in a sense, that it's too easy to dispose.
But is there enough awareness, Doctor, in order to teach people how to recycle, reuse?
Well, you can certainly see that a lot of the industries are increasingly focused, because as this new legislation has come into effect, there's been an increasing drive and push from government to industry to put out what they're called integrated waste management plans. So every industry, and there's a few select industries right now, like the paper and packaging industry, which have been asked to present their integrated waste management plan to government, which will then address a lot of these issues and start to pick up waste as a resource rather than just as something to be thrown away. Now, clearly linked to that, these industries are then launching education programs into the communities where people become aware that waste does have value. And these very same numbers are then coming out of our national waste management strategy.
Just briefly then, Doctor, advice to folks out there what they should do with their waste.
Well, the only real way to do it is to follow exactly the waste hierarchy. Reduction at source, you as a householder, that's your top priority. Don't create it if you don't need to. And then there's certainly enough recycling facilities available. We're one of those households where we have cans. We have a can for glass, we have a can for plastic, we have a can for paper. And every week, my wife and I take our materials to a recycling centre. So the collection of our municipal waste every week is limited. In fact, we often put out our collection once a month, sometimes once every 2 months, because if you don't generate it, we reduce the problem.
And the good news story from that is that people can make some money from recycling.
They can. There's certainly enough initiatives to demonstrate that people have generated substantial livings out of waste recycling. At one of our own landfill facilities in the Kloorkop area, we have a municipal landfill in a sense, and we have 148 pickers on that site who live substantially on waste which they're recycling, recovering off that facility, to the point where one of these people, it's a woman who's actually sent her son to university on the income that she's generated out of waste recycling and recovery.
And that's all just because she recycles?
Because she is recovering waste which has value.
What lessons do you think South Africa can learn from other countries, perhaps to avoid the mayhem that is currently playing out here in South Africa? In Johannesburg, I beg your pardon.
Well, there's a lot of lessons to be learned. Some of them are a cautionary note. You know, we tend to look to them for the answers, and we have to be careful. We're Africa, we're South Africa. We often need solutions which are unique to ourselves. We sometimes tend too easily to adopt the European solution. They have other constraints. They have different weather systems, they have a different GDP, they have a different level of, let's call it society. We need, when we start to bring waste management solutions into our country, see, are they fit for purpose? So certainly in our country, if you look at a lot of the European countries, space is a problem. So when they start to say, you know, we need to move waste out of landfill, it's often because they have a constraint on space. It's not that landfill is necessarily a bad solution. They also have the options where they have an increasing focus on waste to energy as a solution for their waste problem. But again,
which we haven't engaged as much.
We haven't engaged as much, but we're a country which is blessed with fossil fuel resources to the nth degree. So when we try to implement some of these, they're not cost effective. If you try and compete waste into energy versus coal into energy, you find it's not as efficient. So you've got to balance these answers out fit for purpose for South Africa.
Doctor, thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome.
Now that was Dr. Johan Skoenraad, excuse the pun, Skoenraad, if you understand Afrikaans, that is. He is EnviroServe's Group Technical Specialist in studio with us, telling you that you have to reuse and recycle all the time. Let's now, we're asking you, of course, the question, is the threat of a plague outbreak real in Johannesburg? You can let us know what's on your mind. Now, due to the Pick It Up strike, is the threat of that outbreak here real? Let me know on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. And remember, you can also do so on the Facebook page. And let's take a look at some of your comments. This one coming from El Panfinso says, so the city doesn't want to raise, El Fantismo, now I can see it clearly. So the city doesn't want to raise salaries yet, can afford to hire outside help for 1 million rand a day? Please make me understand. Well, El Fantino, if they don't pay them, they won't pick it up. Well, I really think illegal strikes should be taken seriously, regardless of why the workers are striking, says Skinny. And then this one, again from El Fantismo, says, do Sandton and Houghton have the same problems? Well, looking at how close they are to Alex, and if not, then Marawai. He asked El Fantissimo. Well, let me see if there's more. If there's no more, let's continue. Yeah, that's the last one we have for you. Right, you can keep them coming on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. You can also do so. Like us on the Facebook page. If you like us there, you become part and parcel of the growing family. Do not let your litter rise. You can see the picture in the background there. But first, let's now take a break and go to the weather update for now.
deepening hunger crisis in Malawi is threatening the survival of children.
And also it is the life-threatening part of malnutrition.
Malawi is facing its worst food crisis in 9 years. Mugabe is the world's oldest sitting head of state, ahead of Queen Elizabeth of Britain.
The veteran leader seeks to temporarily forget his party's problems and instead focus on his legacy.
But he shows no sign of slowing down or stepping down from power after 36 years in office.
News Today keeps you informed with news locally and around the world.
When Judge John Thope challenged the Supreme Court of Appeal when it sent the matter back and said that there must be an inquiry set up.
We unpack business news.
There's an increase in general inflation in the country.
We give you up-to-date news of the day.
The drugs were seized at several locations in Sydney, including a shipping container sent from Hong Kong. Police saying it's the largest haul of illicit drugs in 2 years.
We round up sports news.
Kotata, tell me about the legacy that you would like to build and be remembered for.
Trying to get my foundation running, which is going to focus on, all the sport, doesn't matter disability or able body. So, I'm passionate about sports.
Stay informed every Monday to Friday from 3 to 5:30 p.m. CAT. SABC News.
Why are we paying for people's faults? And some years down the line, it catches up with you, then you didn't listen.
Well, it's a question of, to be fair.
They greet you in English, but the entire lecture is in Afrikaans. Are you saying, therefore, General, that the Hawks did not leak the letter?
I must just say so. Hawks did not leak this document.
Okay, but Gwedemantashe doesn't think so.
That one, Paul, you are drawing me now to the politics. Myself, I'm dealing with investigation. Okay. That one, politician will answer.
Watch Question Time with me, Mpho Tsedu, Monday to Thursday at 5:30 p.m. on the SABC News channel.
Now it is Wednesday, the 6th of April 2016. This is Newsroom on SABC News, Channel 404, Jumbo Africa, and a very warm welcome to the second hour as we broadcast live from our Auckland Park studios here in Johannesburg to the rest of the African continent. I'm Elvis Preston. I'll be with you until 12 o'clock. And as you know, we're also streaming live on YouTube. The entire show is now available on our YouTube channel. Question of the day. We're asking you, due to the Pick It Up strike, do you think that the threat of a plague outbreak in Johannesburg is real? Let us know what's on your mind on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom as well as on our Facebook page. But first and foremostly, let's take a look at your news headlines. Opposition parties in Parliament are intending to turn to the Constitutional Court to enforce Section 89 of the Constitution. Negotiations between the city of Johannesburg and striking picking up workers remain deadlocked. And Tanzania's ambassador to the United Nations expressed his regret at the latest sexual abuse allegations implicating members of his country's contingent serving in the DRC. Now, those are all your headlines, but before we get to your news, let's find out from Kendall Makamate what's happening on the sports front. A very good morning to you, Kendall.
Elvis, good morning. It's been a very interesting overnight world of sports, and a good morning to everybody at home. This is what we've got for you in the sports today. Barely 2 months in as head of World Football's governing body, and new FIFA president Gianni Infantino is already having to dodge tax evasion claims.
Bracky wins it for SuperSport United. What an extraordinary evening.
Ducks throw away a golden opportunity to finally beat SuperSport United, losing 4-2 on penalties in their Nedbank Cup last 16 fixture. And Luis Suarez inspires a gritty fight back from a goal down at the Nou Camp to beat 10-men Atletico 2-1 in the first leg UEFA Champions League quarter-final.
Back into Suarez! Luis Suarez at the double. Barcelona bounce back from being behind.
And that we've got for you in about 20 minutes or so. More of the same as well. Back to you, Elvis.
Thank you very much, Kendall. You will be back later as promised, but right now let's take a look at your top story. Opposition parties in Parliament are intending to turn to the Constitutional Court to enforce Section 89 of the Constitution. They presented a united front after a motion to remove President Jacob Zuma from office failed in the National Assembly. 233 MPs voted against it and 143 voted in favour.
From the get-go, the lines were drawn. The bulk of the opposition parties called for Speaker Baleka Mbete to recuse herself from the sitting. They accused her of impartiality. But she retained her seat in the Speaker's chair. Then, the order of the day, a motion to remove the President from his office.
We know that the ANC will fall in line behind President Zuma, but it is not our job to worry about the internal politics of the ANC. Our job is to uphold the Constitution, to expose the truth, and to offer a clear way forward for the country.
First up for the ruling party was Deputy Justice Minister John Jeffrey.
The court did not find a serious violation as Section 89(1)(a) of the Constitution requires. Nor did the court declare that the President had perpetrated a serious violation of the Constitution or the law, committed serious misconduct, or has shown an inability to perform the functions of office. And it is only on these grounds that Parliament may remove the President from office.
Opposition parties continued to plead with ANC MPs to vote with a conscience.
We are calling upon you to have another Ben Turok amongst you. Another Ben Turok who's going to vote against a mob. It is better to stand alone and stand for the truth.
We as a National Assembly now have a responsibility to act. Otherwise, history will judge us harshly.
If we fail to impeach President Zuma today, we will be in violation of the oath.
The United Democratic Movement recommends as follows. South Africans from all sectors of society should urgently meet and reclaim their freedom by developing and adopting a program of action which will, amongst others, include an immediate resignation of President Zuma, failing which the citizens must cause him to be criminally charged.
Today, the ANC members have the opportunity to search their conscience and offer leadership.
Not all opposition members agreed, and the ANC once more defended the President.
If the President then fails to pay within the prescribed 45 days, only then can we say he has deliberately, knowingly, and with malice violated the Constitution. This will then meet his removal requirements.
Now, I want to urge all fellow South Africans, yes, we have our challenges. Yes, as South Africa, we are growing. There are things that we are going to have to fix. There are things that we are going to have to put in place. But we must never, even a single day, allow for international interference on our matters as a country. For the New York Times to have the nerve to write in its editorial about the leadership of this country, it's uncalled for.
But the 143 who voted for the President's removal are not done, and they may approach the Constitutional Court again.
Some direction must be given.
There's a clear indication in Section 89 that we are duty-bound if an occupant of the office of president violates the Constitution or a serious violation of the law, that we must take action against such an individual. We were determined that such an action must be carried out, but we are defeated by a majority.
It seems neither Parliament nor the courts have seen the end of this saga just yet. April Barbia, SABC News, Parliament.
Now, for more on this story, in our parliamentary studios, we are joined by Lucanio Kalata, our SABC reporter. Lucanio, very good morning. And it was a raucous day yesterday in Parliament. Take us through the proceedings and a wrap of yesterday.
Alvis, raucous, firstly, good morning. And raucous is, I think, a very apt word to describe what took place in the National Assembly yesterday. I think, to a very large extent, though, everything that happened during the sitting of the National Assembly was pretty much as expected. We knew that Baleka Mbete would preside over the proceedings. She is the Speaker, after all. We knew, for instance, that there would be calls that she recuse herself, as parties had already alluded to during last week and over the weekend. Baleka Mbete didn't want to. There was a bit of a lull in the proceedings when parties had to step aside to go and negotiate and try to find some common ground. Eventually, they came back after about 30 minutes, and proceedings then happened as they did. Baleka Mbete presided over the first part of proceedings. As was the case with any day, when she was done with her stint, she then let her deputy, Lechisa Tsenodi, take over, and everything just kind of happened as we had expected it would in the National Assembly yesterday. Alvis.
Now, eventually, after all the stop-start events yesterday, the motion to remove President Jacob Zuma failed, and opposition parties have now threatened to take the National Assembly to court again. Are there any hints in terms of when they will do this?
Alvis, the opposition parties would obviously consider this a matter of urgency. So they would like to go to court, quite soon. Unfortunately, it's not such a simple process because, they want to take it directly to the Constitutional Court, but the Constitutional Court is busy hearing other matters at the moment. So it could potentially be, we could see them maybe in July or so when the opposition parties finally get to have their day in the Constitutional Court. So it won't be... It won't be such a simple matter. Nothing ever is when you involve Parliament, when you involve the Constitutional Court, when you involve politics, opposition politics. So, this is not the end of the Nkandla saga. We expect it to be around for the good part of the year still. Elvis.
Now, a number of people have said that the impeachment process was perhaps too early from the opposition parties to push for that. Is this the last time that we'll probably hear about it?
No, Elvis. The chances are not. I think what we will do, or what the opposition parties will try to do, is obviously wait it out a little bit because, the Constitutional Court had said that within 60 days after its ruling, Treasury had to go and determine an amount, a reasonable amount that the President had to pay, and then the President would then have another 45 days after that. So this takes us to around about August, later this year. August, we do expect that we'll then have the local government elections. So Parliament is then going to go into a recess, and then when it comes back after the August elections, I would imagine then that one of these parties, maybe the Democratic Alliance, will then come back with yet another impeachment motion. You never know, because it's obviously politics, and it is very good for the opposition parties to be seen to be trying to do something against President Jacob Zuma and the ANC, although, of course, the ANC does have the numbers in the National Assembly, and that makes it extremely difficult for opposition parties to succeed with motions of this nature unless they are able to convince some ANC members to vote in their favor. Elvis.
Now, yesterday we also had a number of arguments about the interpretation of the Constitutional Court judgment in terms of the president violating his constitutional duties. And I think this is not the end of it, though.
Elvis, no, I don't think that this is the end of it. You know, legalese, I think, is a language that us as journalists that we don't pretty much like. We are wordsmiths, but legalese is just a different language on its own. So, and I think what is going to happen is that opposition parties, and of course the ANC and the presidency, as we've seen already, they are using the correct judgment from the Constitutional Court to say that no, this is not what the judges had said, but this is what the judges said. What does this word mean? What does the word might mean? You know, so, and I think obviously they're going to try almost everything to try and one-up one another, as politicians do, to try and say, yeah, look, I caught you doing something wrong, or no, you didn't, because this is actually what the judge meant. And I think, you know, I'm not qualified to talk about legalese. Maybe next time when we do this, we'll try and have a constitutional law expert, or maybe just even speak to an advocate for him to break down what exactly the meanings are behind some of the words that these parties are now squabbling over.
Lucanio, thank you so much for that report. That was Lucanio Kalata, our SABC reporter in Parliament, giving us the breakdown of what happened yesterday in Parliament with a motion to remove the president. Moving on now, SABC COO Hlaudi Motsoeneng says that he's not easily influenced. Therefore, nobody can capture him. Now, earlier, the SABC spoke to him and Zwanele Manye, the Professional Progressive Forums, and this is what they had to say.
But Nazim knows there's no way anyone can capture Hlaudi. I have my own ethics and morale, and I influence myself. I don't influence by other people. He knows that as business people, any business people they approach, example SABC, I say to him, no. If it's yes, it will be yes. And for me, I don't give many answers. It's yes or no. That is how I operate. And also, you know, the issue that we need to deal with, I don't think we should deal with politics here. I'm not here to deal with politics. I'm not a politician. But in all these SOEs, what kind of leaders do we have within those SOEs? Because that is critical. If you have yes men, yes women, any business people, they will influence or capture those individuals within the organization. And who's capturing those individuals? Example, take your SABC. You have someone who has been doing business for more than 20 years. For me, that is capturing certain state SOEs. And when you ask the question, why do we have this company and it's the only company who's doing business? It's because, no, it's a contract. But when you check the contract, it has only starting date. It doesn't have ending date. So you have a starting date, which means you allow business people to dictate a project, to say, we as business people will come, will take 10 years to finalize your project. We have changed that at the SABC.
I think it's alarmist to say we've got a state capture in this country. And I think it's important for us, first of all, to say what is the state? So that when we say state capture, we know what is captured. And I think it would be very unfortunate if the sum total of understanding of the subject is going to be limited to the Guptas. That would be very unfortunate. A state is a far bigger animal. You've got the whole government with some 34 odd departments. Has that been captured? You've got the whole parliament that took a massive decision yesterday. Was that the parliament's decision or was it the decision coming from elsewhere? You've got the Concord, which has taken a massive decision a few days ago. Was it their decision? Was it a decision elsewhere? So this concept has got condescending elements. It's a concept that says everybody else is a puppet and there are big powers behind the scenes. That's what this is about. That is a real estate capture.
Now, Pick It Up has announced that it will resume day shifts in some areas to deal with backlogs. The company says this is aimed at reducing rubbish accumulating in densely populated areas which are difficult to service at night. The South African Municipal Workers Union, meanwhile, says there's a new offer on the table to try and resolve the protracted strike. Pick It Up employees went on an illegal strike 5 weeks ago, demanding a 10,000 rand monthly salary and the removal of their MD. Since then, garbage had been going uncollected in Johannesburg. Meanwhile, the National Institute for Communicable Diseases is now taking measures to prevent any outbreak of a bubonic plague. This after a dead rat found in a squatter camp in Tembisa tested positive for plague antibodies. The NICD says people are increasingly exposed to health risk, especially in informal settlements. Further afield now, South Africans mentioned in leaked Panama Papers will be investigated by relevant agencies to ensure that they have complied with the law. Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan says in a statement he has noted reports of certain South Africans who may be linked to offshore bank accounts. The Panama Papers have lifted the lid on offshore links of renowned figures worldwide.
Governments across the world have begun investigating possible financial wrongdoing by the rich and powerful. This comes after the leak of more than 11.5 million documents named the Panama Papers from the Panamanian law firm which specializes in setting up offshore companies. The papers have revealed financial arrangements of prominent figures, including friends of Russian President Vladimir Putin, relatives of the Prime Ministers of Britain, Pakistan, and Chinese President Xi Jinping, and the President of Ukraine. The Panamanian lawyer at the center of the scandal says his firm was a victim of a hack from outside the company and has filed a complaint with state prosecutors.
The emails have been taken entirely out of context. For example, from Brazil, it's an email from 2005, and I believe we were changing to a digital system at the time. There are a large number of papers in the office, and somebody said that we should arrange those papers.
On Tuesday, Iceland's Prime Minister resigned, becoming the first casualty of the leak. Meanwhile, Panama could retaliate after France announced it will put the Central American nation back on its blacklist of uncooperative tax. Mossack Fonseca is the world's fourth biggest provider of offshore services. It has acted for more than 300,000 companies. There's a strong UK connection. More than half of the companies are registered in British-administered tax havens, as well as in the UK itself.
And I have some savings, which I get some interest from, and I have...
News for now. After the break, Kendall will be back with your sports news.
Technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
Good morning and welcome back. I'm Kendall Makhamat and I've got your sports on Newsroom. Our top story is on football, where SuperSport United have completed the Nedbank Cup quarter-final lineup. They beat the University of Pretoria 4-2 on penalties to advance past the round of 16. It was an entertaining encounter which ended 3-3 after extra time. Now, Thabo Nemukondeni opened the scoring for the away side in the 12th minute.
There comes the first ever goal by Tuks against SuperSport United.
SuperSport equalised in the 26th minute, courtesy of a Michael Morton special.
And it may roll still for Morton, who rolls it in, arriving late in the box.
Ducks took the lead again early in the second half, with Ian Chukova finishing off a great team move.
They're looking for the 1-2.
The own goal by Grant Kikana seemed to sound the death knell for SuperSport.
The second now looks to turn provider. Oh, it's an own goal. He is a provider. It's 3-1 to Tuks.
But Stuart Baxter's men kept fighting and pulled one back in the 73rd minute as Jeremy Brokey headed one in. And the comeback was completed in the 84th minute when substitute Moni Nell was in the right place at the far post to bundle in Morton's cross.
Georgia, 3-3.
Following an uneventful period of extra time, the game would be decided from the spot.
Williams confident.
When Williams saved successive spot kicks as SuperSport booked their place in the quarterfinals.
For SuperSport United, what an extraordinary evening and an extraordinary.
It really was an extraordinary end to that match. Now, Luis Suarez scored a brace as Barcelona beat 10-man Atletico Madrid 2-1 in an exciting Champions League quarterfinal first-leg clash at the Nou Camp. Atletico's Fernando Torres scored the opening goal, but was later red-carded after being booked for a second time. In Germany, Bayern Munich defeated Benfica 1-0.
He's an unbelievable footballer.
Torres put his side in front in the 25th minute after a clinical display which also featured Koke. But his side's joy was short-lived. The Spanish international was sent off just before half-time for 2 bookings in 7 minutes. Suarez scored the equaliser after just more than an hour and the winning header 10 minutes later to put his side in the driving seat ahead of next week's return leg.
We know we got a good result. We also know that they scored a goal, although we were playing at home. But now they're forced to score in Madrid. For now, the advantage is ours.
At the Allianz Arena, Bayern Munich looked to be on fire after Chilean international Arturo Vidal scored in the 2nd minute. But despite 15 attempts, the hosts failed to find the back of the net again as they prepare for the return leg in Lisbon next week. Goalkeeper Joe Hart and midfielder Kevin De Bruyne are set to return for Manchester City when they face Paris Saint-Germain in the French capital tonight. City know that PSG, playing in their 4th consecutive quarter-final, are desperate to reach the last 4 for the first time. But they are confident of victory themselves.
I think also it's important the mentality of the team. We are not coming here to Paris to try to draw 0-0 or trying to not to play in the same way we do every time that we play it doesn't matter in which competition.
In tonight's other match, Real Madrid hope to carry their momentum from last weekend's upset victory over Barcelona to struggling Wolfsburg. Despite reaching the knockout stages for the 33rd time, Real expect a tough clash against the German outfit, who feature in their first Champions League quarter-final.
Wolfsburg has made it to the quarter-finals despite having difficulties in the Bundesliga. But this is about Champions League, and it's important for all players to have a different motivation.
Tonight's matches are scheduled to get underway at 8:45. Diesel Zankel, SABC News.
Just to extend that clip a little bit further and just to give you a quick summary of this week's UEFA Champions League action. As you can see, quick reminder of last night's result at the Allianz Arena. Bayern Munich a 1-0 win against Benfica. And then Barcelona pulling one back against 10-man Atletico Madrid. Torres allowing his head to get too big for the occasion and getting himself red-carded. Tonight, PSG against Manchester City at Parc des Princes. 8:45 is when that match happens. Manchester City will be trying to see if they can give Manuel Pellegrini a good sending off, as this is his last few months at the helm of Manchester City. Then Wolfsburg, their very first time in the Champions League, up against it. They're playing Real Madrid. They welcome them to the Volkswagen Arena in Germany. 8:45, both matches kick off. Now, Australia's Jason Day will tee off in the Masters this week as the tournament favourite. This despite his reluctance at that description. Reigning Masters champion and world number 2 Jordan Spieth has been grouped with fellow American Bryson DeChambeau and England's Paul Casey for the first round at Augusta National. Day, who landed his first major title at the 2015 PGA Championship, will launch his bid for a second consecutive Grand Slam crown in the company of American Matt Kuchar and South African Ernie Els. While the expectations of his fans soared sky high after Jordan Spieth's sensational 2015 campaign, the American feels much greater pressure from himself as he prepares for his Masters title defense this week. Jordan Spieth triumphed 5 times on the PGA Tour last season, including 2 major titles, and will tee off in the year's opening major, knowing he's got all the tools required to add another green jacket to his burgeoning trophy cabinet. In other groupings, 2013 champion Adam Scott of Australia will set off with Americans Kevin Kisner and Brooks Koepka, while 2011 winner Charles Schwartzel of South Africa has been paired with American Davis Love III and Spaniard Rafael Cabrera Bello.
There's so many players that can win around here, and there's not just one heavy favourite this week, which is fantastic. I think it's good for the game of golf, and I think it's good for this tournament as well. And I'm excited about the week. I'm excited about getting ready and preparing and getting the week underway.
Certainly said to be a really exciting one. The top golfers are all lined up to tee off against each other. Now, 2 Polokwane-born boxers, Oscar Chauke and Klaas Mboyane, have been stripped of their world titles. This comes after both fighters failed to defend their titles within the stipulated time period because they don't have promoters. At the heart of challenges confronting South African boxing is promoters who sometimes cancel fights which have not secured a broadcasting deal, as this means less revenue from sponsors. Now, moving on to other sporting stories. The Northern Cape rugby team, the Griek, was hard at work preparing for the Currie Cup first season match against the Free States team, the Griffins. Griek was gearing up to make the Currie Cup 2016 season 1 to remember. The match will be played in Kimberley on Thursday. All right, now that's where we leave it with the sports. It's now 10:28. We'll be back with more news, more analysis. You're watching Newsroom. Don't go anywhere.
For victory requires intense effort and teamwork. When you get to it, there is no turning back, because all eyes are on you. When it's action time, nothing should stand in your way. Sports Live tackles and analyzes all the sports action. This is the home of all your sport news, updates, and more. Sports Live weekdays at 8:30 p.m.
The Independent Electoral Commission will today hold a media briefing on the state of readiness for this weekend's final voter registration process. The IEC yesterday postponed all by-elections, including those for April, in the light of continued uncertainty regarding the validity of the voters' roll. Now, the IEC says it's made the decision in the interest of free and fair elections following a recent order by the Electoral Court to postpone by-elections in the Clokyo municipality specifically. Now, Aldrin St. Pierre is standing by to give us an update. A very good morning to you, Aldrin. What can we expect from today's media briefing? What do you think?
Well, good morning. Well, as you indicated there, the expectation is that we'll hear details from the IEC with regards to preparations for the final voter registration weekend, which will be taking place this coming weekend. But quite importantly with this briefing is the issue that will certainly come out is that application by the IEC at the Constitutional Court seeking clarity around what the Constitutional Court really wants in terms of the order that it set down back last year, November, when the Tlokwe independent candidates took the IEC to court after challenging the by-elections in 2013. Remember that the High Court, the Constitutional Court then said that the IEC must have sufficient particularities of people who don't have addresses. What does that mean? That's what the IEC is seeking clarity on. And something else that Mr. Mashinini, the chairperson of the IEC, has raised is clarity around the issue around privacy. For instance, some voters feel that they want to remain private and they do not want independent candidates or any type of candidate to be knocking at their door, trying to canvass for votes. So what happens in the case where those people feel that the rights to privacy are being violated by having their addresses on the voters' roll? Another issue that he raised is also in terms of someone who's destitute. If a person is destitute, what does it mean? Does it mean that that person is not eligible to be a voter or cannot take part in a voters' roll or cannot be in a voters' roll? But yesterday, when I was looking through that Constitutional Court judgment, what the Constitutional Court says that in the case where somebody does not have an address, that does not mean that the voters' roll will be invalid. Another issue that will certainly come out is what we saw happen during the first voter registration weekend, and that was the intimidation of IEC officials. We saw what happened in Denver, in Johannesburg, as well as in Vuwani, in Limpopo, where residents there were protesting against decisions taken by the demarcation board.
Now, Aldrin, all of this is playing out in front of us. Is there a likelihood in your mind that we might have an announcement today of a postponement of the elections or even a precursor to a postponement? How do you read this?
Well, it certainly depends, because remember that the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, Des van Rooyen, hasn't made the announcement yet as to when the elections must take place. What we know from the Structures Act is that the elections must take place between the 18th of May as well as the 16th of August. So in between those months, that's when the elections must take place. However, though, in this the application that the IEC has made to the Constitutional Court, it's said that it won't be able to get all the addresses of the electorate or those who are eligible to vote up until probably the latest or the earliest rather will be 2020. By then they should have sufficient information of every person who lives in South Africa who's eligible to vote and have some sort of sufficient information have sufficient information as per their address or their proof of residence and where they live. Well, we don't expect, I think personally, to have an announcement from the Minister of Cooperative Governance. We don't even know if the Minister of Cooperative Governance will be part of this press briefing, but we know that he did have a meeting with the IEC as well as the MECs over the past weekend, and that's when the decision was taken to postpone the by-elections which were supposed to have taken place yesterday.
In conclusion, this weekend, do you see this as the last registration weekend, or with all the information we have now, do you expect an announcement today where we might have another registration weekend or even more so going forward?
I doubt that the IEC will make an announcement right now as to whether there will be another voter registration weekend. And if you've seen the banners around, it's bold in red that this is the final voter registration weekend. But what's weird about this is making that assertion that this is the final voter registration weekend, even when the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs hasn't made the announcement yet as to when the elections will be taking place. Of course, the IEC has targets that it sets out, and one of those targets was, for instance, during the first voter registration weekend, was to have 1 million new voters on the voters' roll. They've surpassed their target to 3 million. They've managed to attain 3 million, and we wonder whether this time around they'll set another target. Perhaps, let's say, for the 10 million eligible voters who are not on the voters' roll, how many of those do they want on the new voters' roll, and whether they will actually need to have another voter registration weekend to make sure that they meet their target.
Aldrin, thank you very much for that update. Aldrin St-Pierre is at Election House, as you can see. He'll keep us updated about, well, what happens during, or after this media briefing by the Independent Electoral Commission today. It should be very interesting what comes out of it. Of course, as you've just heard, it's been in the courts and all over the news now. Our very own SABC Radio News investigative journalist Jacques Steenkamp, he's here. And while investigating child prostitution in Mogale City, Jacques was accosted and kidnapped by alleged drug dealers who also run a prostitution ring. Now, this came to light on Friday last week. They were alleged to have been in the company of police officers who assisted them. Now, Jacques was held for a number of hours and only released after the group had withdrawn about 5,000 rand in cash from his bank account. Police confirmed that two men, aged 26 and 36, were arrested over the weekend and appeared in court yesterday in connection with Jacques' kidnapping. Now, the man himself is with us in studio this morning. Very good morning to you, Jacques. Thanks for joining us. It's been a traumatic week in your life, hasn't it?
Been very busy, yes.
Just kind of recap. Just recap, before we go into the official investigation and what you're doing, but just recap this entire ordeal for us. And what were you working on at the time, if I may ask?
Well, I got an email last week from my bosses asking from an NGO called Asilweni Cleaning Streets. And what they do, they try to clean the streets, basically, as the name suggests. So what they basically do, they find drug houses that's been hijacked by the drug dealers. Then they try and locate the owners of said houses, and then in the process, they try and buy out the houses or rent the houses to try and turn these houses into places of safety. So I got this email from this lady called Sherilyn Shabangu. She's the CEO of this NGO. And she claimed in the email that the police in that area allegedly are helping the Nigerians, always tip them off when they conduct raids. She also claimed that her and two of her colleagues were held captive for about 3 hours and we were tortured for information and stuff by these Nigerians. So that piqued my interest. So I went down there on Friday morning to have an interview with her. And we sat in the house and she spoke at length of what she does. She even mentioned, for example, that the youngest child they rescued in that area is 9 years old from sex traffickers. So then after that, I asked her to show me the area. So she accompanied me in the car and we drove around. And I must tell you, I saw so many prostitutes, young girls, white, black, brown girls. It was just insane to witness this in broad daylight. And this was in the middle of the day, this happened. And everywhere I saw drug dealers doing business. And in between the prostitutes and the drug dealers, small children ran up and down because they live in the area. So after that, but I tried to approach a few prostitutes with my equipment in my car hidden beneath my windowsill. But basically, they didn't want to speak to me because they recognized Sherilyn. So I then dropped her off and I decided to go off on my own. And after a few conversations, I actually located an Afrikaans-speaking prostitute, and I basically went undercover to try and tell her, that I'm a customer, so that I can get access to one of his houses and do a proper interview with her. So I spoke to her, then I drove around the corner, I hid my equipment, and then basically I just went back and I picked her up like a customer. And she took me into this house, but the whole time I put my phone in my pocket and recorded the entire thing. So we went into this really horrible-looking room and stuff. And we started chatting, and I kept telling her I'm comfortable, trying to gain her confidence. And then initially we sat down, and I started interviewing her, asking her all the questions, like where she's from, why she's doing this and stuff. And a little while later, a police officer burst into the room. And I couldn't recognize his rank or anything because he was facing me. And he basically said he's going to arrest me for promotion of prostitution. So I didn't want to break cover at that time. So I kept on telling him, let's go outside. But he refused that I leave the room. And then eventually I had to say I'm a journalist. So I said I'm a journalist. I showed him my recording. Luckily, I saved that recording and started a new recording. Because a little while later, he left and a prostitute left. And as I left, the two Nigerian nationals came into the room. And the one's hand was behind his back the whole time. So I assumed he was armed. And then they were aggressive. They took my phone, my keys and my cell phone, And they were very, they were telling me they kill people in this area. And I generally was afraid I'm going to die. But I kept cool, and I played along with their game. At one point, they wanted money, so I said I might have 1,000 rand. So luckily, I said, I might have 1,000 rand in my account. So then I went, and and the guy said no, but my cell phone's worth more than 1,000 rand. So then he wanted more money. So I said maybe 2,000 rand. But luckily, what I do, I don't keep my money in my current account. I keep it in a savings account linked to that. So this guy then after we went to fetch my wallet, they kept telling me, what they're going to do to me, suggesting they're going to harm me, that if I don't they go withdraw money and there's no money in my account.
Yeah.
But I had to give my phone back to make the transfer into my account. So when I eventually gave my phone back, they could see I had more funds in the account.
Yeah.
And then luckily I couldn't say that I've got a 5,000 rand limit. So they only managed to transfer the 5,000 rand, which they went with to withdraw. And then later, 2 more cops came back, and they said they had a report from a black lady that a white guy's being held hostage. But I couldn't trust them because I assumed from what the NGO was saying about the police in the area, and the first guys, bursting in there, making all this claims of arrestation, I couldn't trust any of them. Therefore, I just played along and said, no, I'm a journalist, and nothing is okay. But luckily, sorry.
And what happens next? What happens with the police who are supposedly in cahoots, and what is the latest of the investigation? I understand that you're collaborating with some other members of the SAPS.
Yes. I can't say a lot about that because I'm a witness now as well, and I'm part in the whole thing. But I mean, on Saturday I accompanied the police on a raid where I positively identified both the suspects. We went back to the house, we went in, and these guys were arrested. And I assume that they'll look into the claims. Like I said, I can't positively say the police guys were involved.
Yeah.
But from the manner and from what I heard, I couldn't trust them. So I didn't want to take any chances. So I'm sure they'll basically look into that. And
in conclusion, they were in court yesterday. Can you tell us what were the outcomes there, and how do you think this matter will proceed now?
Well, they were on Monday, they were in court, and then they added additional charge. They're facing charges now of aggravated robbery, and of kidnapping, and they'll be back in court on the 11th of April, Monday, for a formal bail hearing.
Well, Jacques, you're doing a fantastic job, but one would never want to end up in a situation like that. Jacques, I'm going to invite you now to come back and tell us when you can talk a little bit more about how this matter, of course, continues in the courts now, it seems. But it is really a concern if the picture that you're painting us is indeed real. Jacques Steenkamp, investigative journalist with the SABC, he was kidnapped last week. He's here to tell us, to share the story with us. Can't tell us everything because he's now a witness, he tells us, as the matter is before the court. Thanks for joining us this morning, Jacques Steenkamp. As always, Jacques brings us, if it's not one of the books he's written, well, he gets himself into a whole world of trouble. Thank you very much for joining us today, Jacques Steenkamp. Now, moving on, let's take a quick look at the front pages from around the African continent. We'll start in Zimbabwe, where the Herald reports that CMAD Managing Director Davison Maka has been arrested on allegations of obstructing the course of justice after he reported cooked up papers showing how he got 2.7 million in the botched fuel deal was spent. Anyhow, moving to Nigeria, the Vanguard says that Nigerians might have to pay more for petrol in the days ahead, as the federal government yesterday disclosed that it would review the price of petrol in the country next month. Finally, Angola, Jornal de Angola reports that the Director General of the World Health Organization yesterday praised the efforts of the Angola authorities to control the outbreak of yellow fever in that country. Of course, the World Health Organization has scored Nigeria low in its response to the Lassa fever outbreak. The organization is calling for more rapid diagnostic tests as a way of preventing death. Since it broke out 3 months ago, Lassa fever has killed more than 160 people in West African countries, with Nigeria accounting for the majority of the deaths in the region. The disease is caused by rodents.
Over 300 cases of Lassa fever have been reported in Nigeria, Benin and Sierra Leone. Nigeria accounts for the majority of the cases, with more than 160 deaths. The Lassa virus is carried by the mastomys rat found in parts of West Africa. The virus is transmitted to humans from direct contact with infected rats or through contact with food or household items contaminated with rat feces or urine. Local residents in Lagos are taking extra precautions to protect themselves against infections. Some are buying rat poison and spreading it across their homes to get rid of the rodents.
I got rat poison and rat gum, so I poured some of the rat poison around my house. So when the rats come there and smell it, they die. Or when they are in my house and they go on the rat gum, I easily catch them and throw them out.
Lassa fever has been in Africa for many years. Up to 300,000 people get infected annually. Only about 3% presenting symptoms severe enough, needing hospitalization.
We have some laboratories in the region who are able to diagnose Lassa fever, but they are not too many, there maybe 5 or 6 in total. We need now a test that you can do in the hospital at the point of care with the patient, so that very quickly we know that it's Lassa fever, we treat with ribavirin and we save the life of the patient.
Although rare, Lassa fever can also be transmitted through contact with an infected person's body fluids. The WHO is supporting the Ministries of Health in West Africa by providing antiviral drugs that cure Lassa fever and protective personal equipment to protect healthcare workers in the hospitals.
Prolonged drought has left tens of thousands of people struggling to find food in southern Madagascar. Aid agencies have warned that a lack of access to food, healthcare, water and sanitation has led to the rise of severe acute malnutrition in that country. The Madagascar government has declared a state of emergency in the southern region now.
Madagascar and other parts of southern Africa are facing drought and hunger made worse by the El Niño weather pattern. El Niño has led to droughts in some regions and severe floods. In some areas, families are forced to eat cactus fruit, which they have to sometimes walk for up to 5 hours to find. Local health workers conduct visits in some of the far-flung villages, but even them are affected by the prolonged drought.
We eat cactus fruit and nothing else that is healthy. That is vitamins for the body, only cactus fruit. We are lucky to have cactus fruits, but when they are over, I don't know what we shall do.
The UN has drafted a contingency response plan with a budget of $70 million, of which only 9% has been secured so far. 80% of the Malagasy population in 7 districts of the southern Madagascar are food insecure. The plan is prioritizing food security, nutrition, health, water and sanitation.
Over the past 2 years, this situation has even worsened. With a prolonged drought in 2014, 2015, and in the early stage of 2016, we are also going through that same drought with a lot of consequences in terms of increased food insecurity, but also malnutrition.
Aid workers have also warned that they expect a rise in malnutrition in the coming weeks and months. The European Commission Humanitarian Aid has funded UNICEF with more than 1.5 million euros that will go to treating approximately 15,000 severely malnutrition children in southern Madagascar.
Now, the South African Weather Service has predicted more rain over the country this week, especially in the northern parts. Gauteng, Limpopo and even the Free State should be on the lookout. The cold front has been moving over the country since yesterday. And the Bloemfontein Weather Office now says colder conditions can be expected over parts of the country now. Tsietse Monare, he's about to give us a weather update. But before we go, I want to talk to you about what the sort of weather outlook is for the rest of the week. We see the first massive cold front coming in over the country. Is it a month early?
Not really. I mean, there's actually been a couple of cool fronts that just passed, but they were not as strong. They didn't influence the weather that much, except for a bit of drops in the southwestern parts of the country with a bit of, cooler temperatures along the coastal paths. And the one that just passed recently, that one is a bit stronger, made it all the way past KwaZulu-Natal, so it has changed the way we're feeling at the moment. You can also feel here in Johannesburg, I think maximum temperatures we're expecting this afternoon is just below 20 degrees. Yeah. And some areas of South Africa, especially in Emelo, there it will be around 13, and Kokstad will be at 12, 13 as well. So yeah, it has affected that, and also it's coming in with moisture. I actually saw a bit of a low pressure coming in from the northern part of Namibia, and it's affecting the rainfall patterns into the Northern Cape province, some parts of the northwest, and even in the Free State province. And luckily for us as well, we are expecting some rain. There's a good chance, more than 50% chance of rain here in Gauteng.
But winter will come on time. This is not winter. This is seasonal weather. Yeah,
this is basically, one of those transition periods when you get a bit of the high pressures coming down, going further up into either the Atlantic or the Indian Ocean, and then the low pressure systems are coming through. They come in that form of cold fronts. You know, so that little bit of a depression is what introduces us to our winter, and basically that's what's going to fall on. And you know, with cold fronts, they like a pack of families. So once one has passed, 2 or 3 more come through, and then that really leads to temperatures not recovering. So yeah, winter will set in, you know, in its right paces. I think we will receive some of, you know, the last kick of a dying horse in terms of the rainfall. And then as soon as that has come through, we'll get more rainfall in the Western Cape, but much drier towards the Highveld and here in the northern part of the country.
Well, thank you. Tsetse Manario is going to leave us now to set up to do a comprehensive weather forecast. But, of course, today we ask you a question. The question deals with, well, the threat of bubonic plague here in Johannesburg. And this was it. Is the threat of the plague outbreak, is it real here in Johannesburg? Of course, rat infestations we have. We've got rubbish on the streets all over, and this has quadrupled the number of rats doing the rounds in the city. These are some of the tweets some of the responses that you've been sending in to us with regards to that question. Now, Alfantismo says at SABC Newsroom, so the city doesn't want to raise salaries yet can afford to hire outside help for R1 million a day. Please make us understand. Imagine you had to pay everyone 10,000 rand a month. That works in the country. That would be unaffordable. Skinny says, SABC Newsroom, I really think illegal strikes should be taken seriously, regardless of why the workers are striking. That would set a dangerous precedent. Alfantismo again. Do Sandton and Houghton have the same problems, looking at how close they are to Alex? And if not, then why? He asks the legitimate question this morning. Those are some of the tweets with regards to, of course, our question of the day, which we all have seen. We've dealt with at length regarding the plague and possible plague outbreak. But things that are more pressing, it seems, immediately. Cold fronts on the way into the northern parts of the country. Temperatures drop, as you heard Tsietse just tell us. Let's go to the weather desk, where Tsietse will give us a complete update.
Welcome from the weather desk. Yes, we are expecting some slightly cooler conditions for most parts of South Africa, especially if you're going to be in the southern regions. So from the Western Cape in towards KwaZulu-Natal, including the Eastern Cape, let's not forget that. Some parts of the Northern Cape also expected to be much cooler. In terms of the rainfall, most of it coming in towards the northeastern interior, but most of the moisture also coming up from the northern parts of Namibia, as well as over the southern parts of Angola. Then by tomorrow, we'll be seeing scattered showers towards Upington, some parts of Tsabong, as well as the rest of the southern part of Botswana. Temperature-wise, a cool day for Bloemfontein, a maximum of 19 degrees. Also, Pretoria is only sitting at 19. 27 is expected just towards Cape Town, so slightly warmer conditions are expected along those regions. And then if you're going to be in Upington, expect a maximum of 28. Walvis Bay is at 30. Some partly cloudy skies are expected towards Brazzaville as well as over Luanda. So rainy conditions setting in there. Look at this purple patch here, indicating stronger chances of rainfall. Moving in towards the central parts, coming all the way towards that western side of the DRC, as well as over the northwestern side. Closer to Central African Republic, you should expect a bit of scattered showers there. And then temperature-wise, 24 for Kigali. Kampala is just around 23 degrees, as well as over Nairobi. Mogadishu, nice and hot at 32. We are expecting rain for Mombasa and Dar es Salaam, as well as over Lilongwe. Juba is at 38. Do you expect Addis Ababa at around 23 degrees? And those conditions along the northern parts of Central Africa are expected to be quite warm. Agadez is expected to be clear. Al Joof as well, sunny skies coming up there, but there's a bit of moisture moving in towards the Sahara Desert. So you might even see some clouds developing over places such as Agadez, as well as into Al Joof. Temperatures at 41 degrees over the northern parts, 38 for Luxor, and Mecca is at 36. Some sunny skies are expected for Riyadh. But as you move further up north, we're expecting rainy conditions there and clouds all the way towards Tripoli. The northern parts of Africa should expect some slightly cloudier conditions there, with a little bit of sunny skies for Dakar, and rainy conditions expected just along the southern interior, with a bit of showers strengthening over Lagos as well as over some parts of Abuja. Niamey, very hot at 45. Bamako just following shortly there with a maximum of 39 degrees. That's why I leave it for the weather. Do stay tuned. There'll be more later.
technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
It's Wednesday, the 6th of April, 2016. Hello and welcome to Newsroom. This is Newsroom, Jumbo Africa. This is the second hour, and of course we broadcast until 12 o'clock. You have to stay with us as we broadcast from here in Johannesburg, South Africa, to the rest of the African continent. Now, remember that we're asking you a question today, and that question relates to all the dirt that you see thrown around here in Johannesburg, the Pick It Up strike. Now, we're asking you the threat of the plague outbreak here in Johannesburg. Do you think it is real? I want your thoughts on the Facebook page. Let me know what's on your mind, as well as on the Twitter handle at SABC Newsroom. But before we get any further, let's take a look at all your headlines. Well, it seems there's a briefing right now. Let's cross live to the Independent Electoral Commission media briefing in Pretoria.
To ensure that South Africans understand exactly what they need to do when they get to voting stations this weekend, let me hand over to the Chief Electoral Officer of the IEC, Mr. Mosotho Moepsha, to take us through the preparations of the IEC. Madam Mosotho.
Thank you very much. Fellow South Africans, good morning. The Electoral Commission is appealing to all eligible voters to make use of the final opportunity to register and to update their registration and address details at their voting stations this weekend on Saturday the 9th and Sunday the 10th of April 2016. While registration for the upcoming 2016 municipal elections will continue at the Electoral Commission's local offices until the date of the elections is proclaimed by the Minister of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, the opening of 22,617 voting stations this Saturday and Sunday between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. provides the most convenient opportunity for voters to ensure they are ready to participate in this year's elections, which are scheduled to take place between mid-May and mid-August. As always, the Electoral Commission is hoping as many new voters as possible will join the existing 25.6 million registered voters to boost the voters' roll above its current level of about 75% of the eligible voting population. To significantly increase the current voters' roll will require a large number of young voters who are first-time voters to register this weekend. Statistics show that approximately 80% of the 8 million eligible voters who are not currently registered are younger than 30. Over 3 million South African voters visited their voting stations during the March registration weekend to register for the first time, to re-register and to update their registration and address details. This included almost 700,000 new voters, and it is hoped that at least a similar number will register this weekend. The Electoral Commission is also making a special plea to all existing registered voters to use this weekend to visit their voting stations to update and confirm their address details. The Constitutional Court found in November last year that a voter's address or sufficient particularities of their place of residence were essential to ensure that the voter is registered in the correct voting district. The Electoral Commission has subsequently embarked on a number of initiatives to update and confirm the address details for voters to enhance the quality of the voters' rolls, including urging all voters to confirm and update their address details during the registration weekend in March and this coming weekend. Existing voters can check whether additional address information is required for them by SMSing their ID number to 32810 at a cost of R1. They will receive an SMS back with the name of the voting station where they are currently registered. Voters for whom incomplete address details are currently captured will receive a second SMS urging them to visit their voting station to update their details. Voters can also check their status by dialing *120 *432# or online on our website at www.elections.org.za or call the contact center on 0800 11 8000 between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. In order to register or to update registration and address details, voters must complete a Rec 1 form, which is a voter registration application form, and present it in person at the voting station for the voting district in which they are ordinarily resident. To help speed up the registration process, an electronic PDF format of the REC1 form will be available from tomorrow on our website at www.elections.org.za, which voters can complete online, print a copy, and bring it with them to their voting station this weekend. Voters without formal addresses will be required to complete and sign an affirmation form called a Rec AS form, accompanying the REC1 form, in which they attest to the fact that they live in the relevant voting district. In municipal elections, voters may only vote where they are registered, and voters are reminded that it is a criminal offense to knowingly register in a voting district in which they are not ordinarily resident. To find their correct voting station, eligible voters can, 1, call the contact center on 0800 11 8000 between 7 a.m. and 9 p.m. Secondly, they may dial *120 *432#. Or thirdly, they may use the voting station finder application on www.elections.org.za. All those visiting a voting station should have with them a valid South African identity document, either a green barcoded ID book, a smart card ID, or a valid temporary identification certificate. The Electoral Commission is grateful to the Department of Home Affairs, which will once again open its offices between 8 a.m. and 5 p.m. over the weekend to allow citizens to collect their IDs or to obtain temporary ID certificates in order to register. Voters will need an ID or a smart ID to vote. Finally, the Electoral Commission is appealing to residents of all areas to allow citizens to register unimpeded so that they can exercise their right to vote in these elections. Since the first registration weekend in March, the Electoral Commission has been engaging with stakeholders in all communities where voter registration was disrupted previously to ensure that all eligible voters are given an equal opportunity to participate in the upcoming municipal elections. We thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, CEO. Let me open the floor for any questions of clarity. Introduce your name as well as the media house you come from. I've got already 2 hands from the right side. Let's proceed with the question.
Morning. I think is it on? Marika from Jack Round FM. Just for some clarity, obviously we're still waiting for some information about what's going to happen with the Tlokwe by-elections and when they will happen, and the registration of people that live in informal settlements or whatever. What's the implication of that for this? I mean, everyone is looking at the timeline that we have for these municipal elections to take place. And is it a possibility that they might be extended, that they might not take place this year? Just run us through that, please.
There's a lady next to Marinda, that side, yeah, and then afterwards it will be you.
Morning, Masake Gana from Eyewitness News. You spoke about the disruptions at various voter registration stations. Denver, George Koch, and Kapok were just a few of them in the last registration weekend. What are the measures in place to ensure that these disruptions do not occur again? Thanks.
Okay.
Good morning, Alvin Sampier from SABC TV News. Just in terms of the application to the Constitutional Court and the decision to postpone the by-elections, I've read up on section 25, 6A. of the Structures Act. And it says that the elections cannot take place within 90 days. Well, when the general elections of the municipal elections are set to take place within 6 months, that means that the manager of the council cannot proclaim an election date. Does this then mean that the people of Tlokwe, in this case, should just forget that there will not be a by-election that's going to take place because the Structures Act does not allow for that, considering that we still don't have a constitutional court ruling on this matter? And the final question is President Jacob Zuma also signing the Amendment Act, the Amendment Structures Act, and I noticed that one of the issues that is included there is that now a voter who goes and vote will now be able to, if they want to change their decision before they put their ballot in the ballot box, they'll now be able to get a new ballot. How would that operate? Does this mean that the IEC will now have to print more ballot papers?
Thank you so much. Let us deal with this first round of questions before we take another round. CEO Tlokwe by-elections.
Yes. Thank you very much. My colleague will take the first question because I missed some of it, but my colleague will take, and if we need to come back to it, we'll do so. Let me start with the last question. The President signing the amendment bill into law, it's something we welcome. It's a matter we've been working on for quite some time, but the provision you are talking to is one that allows a voter who has spoiled their ballot before they deposit that ballot into a ballot box to exchange that ballot if they have changed their mind or for some reason they have spoiled it, to get a fresh ballot. They can only do so, or they will only do so for a limited occasion. And in any event, we will need to provide for such a voter. Yes, it is so that when one prints ballot papers, you look at the registered population in that voting district, but you also make provision for things like this where a ballot may be spoiled. And so there shouldn't be concern that we may be out of ballots, or we will print ballots wastefully. We look at the statistics and we make a percentage allowance for this kind of developments. In relation to the question on Section 25 of the Local Government Municipal Structures Act, that provision relates to the calling of a by-election. You will recall that in Tlokwe, where the by-elections were called, we no longer need to call them. They've just been postponed. So the municipal manager will not need to call them again. But where that provision at this time of our preparations becomes important is that closer to an election, the Act prescribes a period within which casual vacancies or elections in a municipality may not be called by a municipal manager. However, given certain imperatives, the MEC responsible for local government in that province may, after consulting with the Commission, proclaim a by-election. We do not have that situation as we speak currently. I trust it addresses addresses the question that you were raising. What are the measures that we have taken to ensure that disruptions are minimized? Our key duty is to ensure that we have persons who will be able to register and to vote. We talk extensively with stakeholders in the work that we do, such as voters, community leaders, political leaders, civil society organizations, and so on and so forth. But we also talk extensively to the law enforcement agencies. And we are hoping that in all of those discussions, which we have undertaken and continue to undertake, that the sum total of the implications of this on the work that we do will allow us to work fairly unhindered in the registration weekend that we are going to. The first question from Jacaranda, I missed some of it as I was trying to. Will you deal with it?
Well, the question relates. Oh, you want microphone?
No, okay. Let's we'll shift around. Let's
no,
don't move. Yeah. We'll do the dancing, yeah.
Okay. No, thanks. The question related to whether the postponement and the fact that the Concord has not issued judgment would affect the holding of the by-elections within the constitutional time frame. The position of the Commission is that we are planning to have these elections within the constitutionally mandated time frames. That is, from any time from the 18th of May 2016 to the 16th of March, or sorry, of August 26. Everything is being done to achieve that deadline. So, barring a major national catastrophe, these elections will happen in terms of the constitutionally mandated time period.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. If I can take the second round of questions. Daddy.
Good morning. My name is Inside. I'm with African News Agency. Just to inquire, in the areas where you have to withdraw your staff, have to withdraw because of the insecurity, how much of concern is it this time, the safety of your staff on the ground?
Okay. I've got 3 other questions this side.
Given that voter registration was open at municipal offices, do we have a number as to how many people have registered up to this day? And do you know how many security personnel will be deployed to deal strictly with the elections, election registration?
Okay.
Yudison Jamala from CCTV Africa News. You're saying, as per constitutionally mandated time period, the elections will be announced, right, within the dates from May to August. What we'd like to know is, when will the IEC actually announce the date? When will you know that you have to announce the date? Because May is next month, for instance. And also, can you help us with the stats, as she's already asked? Last time you said it was mainly women and young people who pitched, which was one of the highest numbers, unlike the previous years or previous elections. Can you help us with the stats? How many women? Do you know the percentage? And young people? And are you expecting the same this coming weekend?
Let me take the last question.
Okay, thank you so much. TD Madia from Power FM, Power News. I just want to get a bit of a question. I actually want to add to a question I think somebody asked you already about the hotspots. I know you said that you were meeting with the communities where violence flared up over the last registration period. I want to ask you about what's on your watch list right now. Are you concerned about specific areas ahead of this weekend? That's the one question. Secondly, a lot of questions around the by-elections in Tlokwe, and a lot of court proceedings and a lot of questions have been happening around that particularly. Does this worry the IEC in terms of whether or not it's dented public perceptions of whether or not the IEC can do its job? Are you worried about how people perceive the IEC and its abilities? Are you doing something about that? Thank you.
Thank you very much. CEO, let's start with staff security.
No, let's deal with the last one. It's easier to remember the last things first. I think, one of the things that we can help ourselves with, easier than expect anybody else to help us with, is to do what we are we're meant to do. And that's a call every one of us is resolved to accomplish. We will speak as we are required to speak, but we will do everything in our power and to the best of our ability. That's what we will do from this institution. And that is our resolve to go and make our work happen as it should happen. Now, when you do that, of course you've got to be aware of the environment within which you operate. And we are. Where there have been issues affecting our staff members, we've had to address those issues, to the extent that we could address them. Where these are issues that are affecting communities, we have engaged openly with those communities to the point where solutions may be found, where those solutions don't lie with us. There are matters that are before the courts. That's one way of resolving those disputes. And it is important that all of those matters are handled in a manner that is civil and will not unduly harm lives that are, or innocent lives, so to speak. So we have everything on our watch list. We have to ensure that our staff get to the voting stations on Saturday, that they are fully prepared for the job at hand. We have to ensure that they understand the work that they need to do. But we've also got to ensure that voters know what they need to bring. We've also listened to voters and tried to make life easier for them. We have indicated at this press briefing that we have developed a form. It will be online tomorrow, where voters can capture their details and simply present that form at the voting stations. These are initiatives we undertake because we will let our actions speak more than what, proverbially people will just want to say. It is important that people, provide their details to us as they are required to provide those details. But it is also equally important for us to facilitate how well they could do so, even in the time frames that we have before us. Places we are worried about, the rest of the country is our territory this weekend. We will worry about it, every 1 square kilometer of it. But there are specific places that we are on our watch, and where we've had to take measures. And please permit me to indicate that today it's not about sharing security concerns and things. These are matters for security, the security cluster to deal with. But to the extent that we can facilitate that, I want to assure you that we have taken care that we deal with those issues. To deal with those matters, and we'll continue to deal with those issues, as well as we should deal with those issues. The issue of registration at our local offices and the numbers that we are expecting. One must admit that. And we say so openly to yourselves and to this nation. We know South Africa. We work in this country. We are part of it. South Africans would like things made easier for them. Yes, registration is open Mondays to Fridays at our local offices. But a registration weekend like this, which is an opportunity we create very happily, makes it much easier for everyone, one, to visit the voting station, which is correct for them in that area where they live. They get acquainted with it, they get acquainted with our processes, and it is where they live. They don't have to travel to where we are. But the issue is people don't do that every day. That's why we create this opportunity and we make a call that let's use it to the best of our ability. How many people we are expecting? If you ask me, I want every one of the eligible voters that are yet to register or yet to provide their sufficient particularities or address details to do so. Can you imagine how easy it will make all of our lives? You know, and that's what we really want. And we'll do everything that we can to ensure that we deal with this. The youth and women we are expecting, those statistics will make available to yourselves. I don't have it immediately with me, but it is important to indicate, as we have done previously, that young people are understandably a greater gap on the voters' roll because they have not had many opportunities to register and vote, like many others who are more senior to them have had. And that's why we are looking at these opportunities. We are communicating to them more than anybody else at the moment. We are trying to understand the issues that they wish to raise with us so that we make it easier for them to engage. We do everything to ensure that you know, their vote also counts when that period comes. I'm confident I've missed one or two things. Granville and Sai, please do help me.
Could there be any additions?
No, I think Granville will deal with when is the date. May is next month.
Oh.
Yeah. So Granville
Will
can,
you deal?
yes, can deal with that.
Yes. Let me help. Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Okay.
You know, my colleague reminded me. You know, I'd like the privilege of announcing a date for an election. But it is not my place in law. It is in fact, a matter specifically reserved for the minister responsible for cooperative governance and traditional affairs. I'm confident. You will recall that the minister will do so after consulting with the Commission. There are ongoing consultations. They're proceeding well, and I am confident that you know, the minister will find an opportunity to put this matter to rest and announce a date sometime soon. I cannot, you know, assume that responsibility. I don't know the date. Having consulted, of course, he will then determine that date and make it known to all of us in the nation. And I am hoping that we will get to know about that soon.
Thank you, CEO. Let me take the last batch of questions. Follow up. The number of registered people, voters.
We have indicated, and thank you very much, we have missed that. In the media statement that we'll make available to you, we have 25.6 million people on the voters' roll at the moment.
Let me take the last round before we wrap up. Aldrin?
Aldrin Cynthia again from SABC TV News. I'm going to ask the question again on Section 25.
Okay.
Is it possible to have a by-election in the next 5 months in those municipalities where the by-elections have been postponed, taking into consideration Section 25, subsection A2, that it can't happen if the elections were to happen within 6 months, the general elections were to happen within 6 months. Is it really possible to have by-elections over the next few months? And then in the case of Vuwani in Limpopo, we understand that the municipality hasn't been set up yet. The Vuwani is incorporating Malamulele as well. That municipality hasn't been set up, and the court is yet to hear that matter, I think sometime next week. How does that then affect the work of the IEC heading forward when you have a case where a municipality hasn't been set up yet those people are called out to register to vote and possibly vote without that municipality having been set up? Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Let me take another question before the IEC panel
As Konachana from ENCA, this issue of addresses, is there a way that the IEC is going to deal with making sure that people register where they live?
Okay. Got the question.
Yeah, sorry.
Alrighty. Any other? Okay, a follow-up. All right. Okay.
So
there's a domination of the mic there. All right. Okay.
In the constitutional court application, CEO, you indicate that the IEC will not be able to meet the standards set out by the electoral court by June. And you say that it will only happen by 2020, the earliest would be 2020. In a case where the Constitutional Court then upholds the ruling of the Electoral Court, does that then mean that the IEC will have no choice but to postpone these elections and possibly the 2019 elections?
Okay. Thank you very much. You know, I've spoken to Sai, my colleague, to answer the question on 25/6, I have a sense there's a question, there's an answer. You want us
to convince. Yeah. There is a possibility.
So
Okay.
I've given you an answer, and I want to hear him give the answer.
Okay, he'll be the last. You'll start.
Let's talk about Vuani in Limpopo. It's not correct to say that there is not a municipality set up. It is. It is being challenged.
No. The council isn't there.
Oh, yes.
It doesn't include.
The situation is this, and it is important for us to say this. Remember that the work that the Municipal Demarcation Board has concluded comes into effect on election day this year. The fact that there will be a new municipality or some municipality will be amalgamated does not mean that they've already been amalgamated yesterday or in December. It is on election day. So the municipality will exist on election day. What we are seeing at the moment is that it is being challenged, and the court will say whether it proceeds or does not proceed. But it is important that it is an established municipality with effect from that date. And remember, when voters vote on that date, they are not voting on the old demarcation. They are voting on the new one. That's why we are registering people in the manner that we are doing at the moment. Addresses. We have indicated in this media statement that we are working hard to, even in this call, to ask for voters whose particulars we do not have. Let me say to you that enormous amounts of effort have been taken to source addresses where we can source them and to deal with that. You will note when you go to the voting stations this weekend, you will note that the voters' roll has addresses where we have them. And one of the issues we are asking you to do is for those people that have not been able to check on our website, to SMS and get their address details, or in fact, get to the PDF format that we have on our online, that they can go to the voting station and check those details at the voting stations. They will be there. And so, we are doing a lot of work. I did indicate earlier that it is best for us to continue to do what we are required to do than to, sit and just talk about these things. There's a lot we are undertaking. I'm very reluctant for us to talk about the matter before the Concord. I think it is important that we like all of us, respect the fact that whilst this matter is before the court, we need to be guided in respect to how we deal with it. But I do want to say this. Perhaps for many, going to court is picking up a fight. We are not. We are not picking up a fight. We are sensibly trying to address a matter that potentially has ample room to create uncertainty. And we are seeking, if you look at our papers, quite a bit of clarity before the courts. Yes, there are issues we are placing before the court as we understood them to be, but we are clearly saying to the court, to the extent that this may not be what you were ordering, let's obtain the clarity that you would want us to have so that we proceed with the work that we need to do in the manner that we should proceed with it. And I think if that is obtained, the uncertainty has been clarified. All of us will proceed, each one of us, whether we be voters, we will do what the court says. This is what we meant, and this is what we want you to. We understand you have to do in law. We will do that. And I think that for us is the value in the thing that is before the court. We do not and we cannot afford the uncertainty that that can create amongst us. I'm going to let you deal with Aldrin's Section 25 S6.
As I understand it, the question is it possible to have the elections post the 6 months period? That 6 months period came into effect on the 18th of February. The categorical answer to that is yes, it is possible to have an election post the 6 months period. And the reason for that is, although the provision inhibits the municipal manager from declaring a vacancy and calling a by-election, the MEC responsible for local government in the particular province has a discretion to call a by-election in circumstances where he feels perhaps there's a hung council or the issue of people's representation is paramount, and so on and so on. So it is possible. Having said so, in respect of the Tlokwe by-election, in our papers we are asking the court to either order that those by-elections be held 6 weeks from the date of its order, or order that they be held in abeyance until the general elections of municipal councils. So the court will make a determination on those seven ones.
Cool. Aldrin, you are covered now, ne? Okay, beautiful. Ladies and gentlemen, I think all matters of clarification have been dealt with. All what's left is that we go out and ensure that South Africans understand exactly what they need to do as we go towards a final voter registration weekend. Thank you once more for your support and ensuring that South Africans have the correct information for weekend. IEC team, thank you very much. Alrighty. Thank you. Sideline interview. Sidelines interview. Let's see. Don't go. Just don't leave. I want to. Yes. Yes. What's the statement? Yes, you can. Let me get someone to give us. So it's not someone we need just to double check because no quick okay.
I didn't realize you given me a cell phone.
Yes,
I should have made it.
I don't know.
They are basically arresting him, continue to arrest him on behalf of the apartheid government.
We are dealing with effects. We are not dealing with the causes. And for as long as we deal with effects, we are never going to solve this problem.
What do these people need in prison? Why are they there? The PAC, as Dr. Pegu is saying, has been seeking answers, and they're not coming.
What kind of answers are you getting?
I really think I've answered that question.
I think it's a difficult question. I don't have an answer for it. How was it possible that they could operate with such impunity?
The only thing you want is closure.
The only thing we want is closure. And unfortunately, I don't really have sympathy for the idea that if you're too old, you shouldn't stand trial.
That's Rights and Recourse with Dumile Mateza, every Sunday at 2 p.m. Central African Time, only on the SABC News Channel.
Welcome back. My name is Kendall Makhamate, and I've got your sports on Newsroom, time being 11:42. Now, the track and field world is waiting with bated breath as Kenya missed its deadline to promulgate into law anti-doping measures as per its agreement with the World Anti-Doping Agency. With me is sports journalist Mark Omar. Mark, good morning. Thanks for coming back to Newsroom.
Yes, it's always a pleasure to come and shed some light on some of the concrete burning issues that are affecting us in Africa.
And the big one that's burning is yesterday, Kenya missed its deadline. They were meant to have promulgated anti-doping laws into Kenyan law books, and they didn't. What happens now?
Well, I would like first to put the facts on the table. I want to assure our viewers there is no cause for alarm. The Minister Wario has said it, but let me put the facts
There's no cause for alarm?
Yeah, there's no cause for alarm. That's why I want to put the facts on the table. For over a year, WADA and the Kenya Anti-Doping Agency have been working hand in hand, shaping the regulations and the protocols that will be used in an anti-doping agency. And so, even up to the time it was coming to Parliament, WADA is in full agreement. They are singing from the same page as the Anti-Doping Agency of Kenya. The government of Kenya has already budgeted the equivalent of over $3 million to get this kick-started.
Is it $3 million?
Yes, over $3 million. And in February, the minister drew the attention of the WADA that we have procedures. And what happens is that these promulgations are rules and regulations, but they must be domesticated into the legal systems and constitutions of the respective country. And it means a different thing. The constitution and laws of South Africa are not the constitution and laws of Kenya. So they must domesticate it, and it must go through the due process of Parliament.
Fair enough.
So up to that stage, there's no crisis. Now, the mistake WADA does, they sit in Montreal there, they don't consider consulting what would be a good date. They say 5th April. Now, in the Hansards, or in the timetable of Parliament, this current Parliament that came in 2012, they have their dates when Parliament will be in recess. And these were decided well in advance. So WADA just decides to go and put it in the middle, on the 5th of April. The Kenyan Parliament is in recess from the 1st to the 10th. The document, remember that when the Anti-Doping Agency and WADA are working together, they're working hand in hand, and they've agreed on this thing. WADA has a copy, the anti-doping has a copy. They know the time limit. So what happened is that it came to Parliament on the 30th.
So when you talk of anti-doping agency, who is representing the Kenyan anti-doping effort? Because they don't have an anti-doping agency that is Kenyan.
They do.
They do?
That is actually what is being set up. So what is going to happen is that immediately...
Well, this is the new setup. This is since last year.
Yeah, this is since last year.
Yes.
So what's going to happen is that as soon as the parliamentarians come back on the 10th, they're going to deal with this thing, and 12th, we hope that even before the end of April, it will be promulgated into law.
So
now,
what exactly were the laws that they were being tasked with promulgating? Or what exactly were the punitive measures that they were putting in place? What is it?
It is a series of laws, and it's very intricate. And you see, if you don't go through this process, you leave out escape routes for cheats, and you can put yourself into litigation. So you must tighten up all the loose ends. And I think what the parliamentarians were upset about is that people from outside Africa don't seem to respect the fact that Africans have systems in place. So they just think they can just kick them around and do what they want.
What I'm getting from you right now is that there's nothing to panic about. There is no crisis. Kenya will be able to put into place the measures it's meant to, and WADA will not impose a blanket ban on May the 12th when the Executive Committee meets.
Exactly. And let me give you two other factors. When it comes to the Olympics, the IOC has now realized that this whole anti-doping thing is being used as a political weapon by those who had WADA, who are British, and those who had IAAF, who are British. It's being used as a weapon. Let me call to mind the statement by the Russian Foreign Minister, Sergei Lavrov. He said, look, we are all in support of getting rid of the anti-doping process. But this WADA is now being used as a political tool. And I agree with it.
You talk a little bit about the British. They themselves, the United Kingdom, have got their own doping scandal that broke just on the weekend. A British doctor claiming to have doped and prescribed to 150 athletes from different codes prohibited substances. Big story in the UK. Now, the bigger part of the story is the anti-doping agency in the UK apparently knew about this guy and what he was doing 2 years ago, did nothing about it. Is there a chance that they might get a blanket ban like Russia did?
Now, remember, let me take you back to our discussions earlier, where I criticized the administration of Sebastian Coe of having one regulation for the world, but those standards don't apply to Britain.
What is actually going to happen in reality here?
Now, this is a case where Britain should actually be banned. A very, very good example, because now here, and it's one of their own saying, look, there's all this cheating around here. You see, this exposes the double standards.
But there've been no names. There've been no names named. No, nobody has been found guilty of actually of doping.
You see, by the time the doctor comes up, you do this in phases. Remember, we said that there was a British athlete who tested positive, but was never penalized. Yeah. She later came up and shed crocodile tears, and IAAF appointed her a member of the Athletics Commission.
Yeah.
So you do it in phases. He has already come up and said, hey, I've got 150. Now, let anybody challenge him. He's got his evidence. So the thing about it is that there's one standard for the rest of the world, but when it comes to these British people, no.
Yeah.
And that's the double standards that has made me be very critical of the British-led WADA people and the IAAF-led British people.
Mark Oma, thank you so much for coming through to chat with us. There's a lot more to talk about. It's a massive subject. Can't cover it in 8 minutes, but we'll be definitely staying close to you over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much.
There you have it, Mark Oma, saying what's good for the goose is good for the gander. That's where we finish off our show for today. Thank you so much for having joined us. We hope that you enjoyed it. We'll be back tomorrow, Eben, myself, as well as Elvis. So have a good day.
Manor produces abstract and symbolic works of art. He called his latest collection Vote with Ink, Not Blood.
Praying for peace, literally, in my own way.
The South African film titled Luister or Listen in Afrikaans tackles issues of race in the country.
I think that the end goal is the reformation of institutional culture, but how we get there is in fact through changing the language policy so that no student is forced to learn in Afrikaans.
It's fashion designers like Julia Mpoko who are starting to pay more attention to menswear and hope to make a mark in the fashion industry.
So regardless of whether you're African, European, there's certain styles that you like. So if an African man enjoys wearing simple, well-tailored pants, then Yes, I guess.
Join Refulo Mula for that 1 hour weekly dose of arts and entertainment news every Friday at 9 p.m. on Trends.
Technology isn't all scary. There's also fun stuff like gaming.
Lots of women do play games, whether it's on their phones or their tablets.
Then there are Africans who are using new tools to make other people's lives much easier.
We typed the whole CV on a small, QWERTY Nokia phone.
For all these and other technology and social media news, join me, Spumelele Zondi, every Sunday at 7:30 p.m. Central African Time on SABC News.
Found in the Northern Cape is the ancient red landscape that once was the home of the Khoi of Southern Africa. Their rock art is an artifact that was once used as a form of communication and as a language. It gives us a glimpse of the Sands' history and how they lived their lives. The Khoi made most of everything that was around them. Traditionally, women spent 3 to 4 days a week gathering wild plants, often going out in groups to search for edible or medicinal plants. About 400 to 500 local plants and their uses were known to the Khoi.
Everyone, this is the nest for the sociable weavers. Sociable weavers are our famous beds for building the largest nest.